Good morning. Welcome everyone to Contemporary Issues. And we're going to have a good discussion today about patriotism. What is patriotism today? Why do we feel proud of our country? And how has it changed over the years too? Ron's going to lead us in a good discussion about that. But before we do our usual announcements, Zoomers, please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. And we are recording this for future playback on YouTube. And any other announcements of things? Okay, a minute or two on things in the news. Our focus, of course, this week is Mr. Biden, the pressure increasing on President Biden from every direction to drop out of this race. And he says only the Lord God will tell him to drop out of this race. But as we go back and watch this video we're making today of this class, won't it be interesting to see what happens weeks or months from now? What really will happen? But any comments on this? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Is her name Dr. Jill?
Dr. Jill, yes. Mhm.
Right, but you mentioned God Almighty and
Oh, that could be. She may have an exalted opinion to influence him.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. She obviously does, yes.
I had heard an interesting comment at at Bellevue where I work at the Carillon. I was giving a gentleman a manicure and he said, I call it elder abuse. He said, if my wife treated me the way Jill Biden treats her husband, leading him around and telling him where to go and do this and do that. He said, I'd be furious. He said, I call it elder abuse. And I went, wow.
Well,
I had never
I've heard it called patronizing also because of some of the ways that people are treated.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
interesting.
Okay.
So thank you, Vicki. Grant.
Okay, so her doctorate is in educational, it's an EDD. Educational doctorate degree. And it's not quite the level of a PhD, but it is a doctorate.
Okay.
And people are making fun of her because they call her doctor. And I've known people that became superintendents and so forth, they had their EDD and people called them doctor.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just the way it is. That's how things are. And so I kind of cringe when somebody says, oh, she's not a real doctor. No, she's not a real doctor. She's an educational doctor.
Good distinction.
It is a real doctor.
I thought she was a medical doctor for a while. Anyway,
That's what.
thank you, Grant. Okay, yes, Jim.
I think that the decision by the Supremes of presidential immunity is as mind-blowing and longer lasting than the debate impact. Very, very, very scary for me.
Okay.
Yes.
That could be. So much going on right now. So many Supreme Court decisions and the election and the war in Ukraine and Gaza and
Soon to be Lebanon.
soon to be Lebanon, Steve says. That could be too. It's a scary time. Absolutely. Okay, speaking of that, okay, Ron, let's talk about.
Okay, let's get the slide out.
And let's do a reminder too, before we start, we're talking once again about politics and individuals and leaders and presidents. Let's be respectful of both sides and say nothing mean about any particular candidates. Okay, with that,
All
slide
right,
up.
how's it going?
Could I make just a comment?
Sure, sure.
There, before we left the house this morning, we were watching on CNN, a program about, the southern border crisis and, an awful lot of the causes and the things that have been going on for many, many, many years, like 30 and 40 years, that have added to this. And Fareed Zakaria was moderating the thing, who I think is one of the greatest journalists in today's world. And if you can find it, and we didn't have enough time, we were late for church. So if you can find it, try and find this thing because it was really powerful. And is also, gave an awful lot of insight as to why this crisis is existing and how the US has been complicit in the whole thing. It's really a powerful program, so just
Okay.
about, it's on CNN and I think it's called the border crisis.
Good. Okay, Ron.
Okay, we'll open it up with a quiz. Who is that in the, about to be hung by the British there?
Nathan Hale.
Nathan Hale. And what were his last words? No. Repeat that again. I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Yeah. And what is the scene over there on that small right picture in the upper right-hand corner? That's at Valley Forge, right? And then, of course, the picture on the left, the D-Day invasion, a real picture of the people going in. Okay, next slide. Okay, if we go to Wikipedia, we get a pretty good definition there of patriotism. It means different things to different people. But most agree that it consists of, it's a combination of an attachment to the language of your homeland. That's one piece of it. The ethnic, including racial part of your homeland, the culture of your homeland, the political environment, and the historical part. So it's kind of a potpourri, a mixed stew of all those ingredients. It's closely related to nationalism, mostly civic nationalism, and sometimes cultural nationalism. Patriotism is like a fire. It can do enormous good, but misused can fuel atrocities and human misery. And the same thing applies to religion, politics, human sexuality, and many other sociology aspects. A lot of the powerful forces in life can be tremendously good, but warped and misused can cause some awful destruction. Next slide. Okay, well, which one of these is most patriotic? I saw a picture the other day of the biggest, most flags in a parade thing that was done somewhere. It might have been in Texas. They had, I don't know, 5,000 or more flags all in trucks and whatever. And some people feel like if I can put the biggest flag in my front yard or the most flags, I'm the most patriotic. That's how you express patriotism in some people's mind. And I've got nothing, some people even wear flags on their head. But
And I have 11 small flags in my front yard.
okay.
If those in the back of the room can't see the picture, it's someone donating blood on the right side.
Okay. So that's an alternative interpretation. Some people feel, well, no, I'd rather see you do the thing on the right than the thing on the left. And I think both are appropriate. Go ahead.
Some of us, myself included, have grown up in churches where you had the Christian flag
Yes.
and the United States of America flag.
Okay.
Yes. That's my heritage.
Mhm.
We have both.
Okay.
Not so today, but that's in the past, yeah.
All right, next slide. Okay. I like to ask the question, how big is your tent and your world? If we claim we love our country, shouldn't that encompass its people and the land? In my opinion, if you say I love my country, it shouldn't mean I love my pickup truck. It should mean I should love the people in it, all of them, and the land and sky. It's got to be all of that, in my opinion. Many say they love their country, but if you dig deep, it's only the folks who live in my state, in my neighborhood, who go to my church, who are the same race and who agree with me politically.
You're married too?
And yeah,
Put that in there, too.
See?
most feel, or many feel Christianity in particular should embrace humankind and the world, not just a narrow tribe. And our closing song today certainly implied that theme, that you can love your country and dear brings tears to your eyes, and it could and should, but your, in my opinion, your patriotism should extend beyond just your little group and your little tribe. Next one. Patriotism in comics. For those who saw the Superman TV show, Truth, Justice, and the American Way, remember that?
Yeah.
There was a Batman comic book from the 40s where Batman and Robin are putting in on the cover of that comic a push for war bonds. And then, of course, Marvel Comics did put out an issue 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that featured President Obama in the comic book. That was kind of cool. Next one. There's a religious component of patriotism. Some people feel, in fact, in some countries, particularly a lot of the Islam countries, the religious component overpowers the nationalism. Some people, particularly in many of the Middle East countries, see their religion and their often extreme religious cause as superseding, and their nationalism and their country is just a small subset of that master overview of religion. And some in our country feel that way. Their ultimate loyalty, shall we say, ultimate thing they put at the top of their pyramid is their religion and the people of their religion. And the other folks, the other tribes often come in second.
Bumper stickers that say, God, country, God, family, country.
Mhm.
People have to prioritize what they feel committed to.
Gun gods and guts or something like that.
I saw another bumper sticker that said, humankind, try both.
Oh, okay.
Alrighty.
Okay.
And so we've all seen in many facets of our history, religion comes into politics very heavily. We see former President Trump holding up the Bible in front of St. John's there in Washington. Right. Many equate Billy Graham as America's troubadour of religion. How many saw the movie Boys Town? It's a classic from the late 30s. Mickey Rooney got his start, but it's a very touching movie.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
It's got with Spencer Tracy,
Yeah.
Mickey Rooney, and I think a lot of the Catholic kids in my neighborhood that complained about their nuns would have complained a lot less if they had had the middle one there.
Yeah.
Next one.
Good.
Okay. From a popular movie, the picture on the left, can anybody tell me what that picture has been pulled out of? What moment in American history that actually was commemorated this week?
Gettysburg?
Gettysburg, that is Medal of Honor winner Josh Chamberlain leading the 20th Maine in a countercharge down Little Round Top when they ran almost completely out of ammo and to repel the last attack. A movie worth watching, by the way, if you don't have that Gettysburg. I was also impressed by the movie in terms of it takes moments to reflect upon why the people were fighting on both sides. It gives some different viewpoints. A movie I like, very controversial, but I've read his book, Ron Kovic. His book was the basis for the movie Born on the 4th of July. And that's a very powerful movie. You will agree or disagree with parts of it, but it still has a story to tell and a very powerful story to tell, some things to think about. Next one. Moments of patriotism. Here's the march across the Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, there on the left. that turned violent on a bloody Sunday. There's one of the black girls who was integrating the Little Rock, Arkansas public schools in 1954. And of course, she got cursed at, spit at, and had to get National Guard protection. In my opinion, and you may strongly disagree, I felt Liz Cheney showed great patriotism. If you read her book and look at it and understand the reasons she gives for the positions she took. Next one,
And the risks that she took.
the risk that she took.
Yeah, she went from 70% to 28% or something like that of the vote.
Right.
She did it, she
Right.
knew it was probably gonna happen.
That's
That would be
Yeah.
patriot.
Right.
as any-
She sacrificed her career
Her
over
position.
her ideals.
Right.
I
bet Okay.
it comes back.
Lincoln. Lincoln opposed the Mexican War when he served his first term in Congress. And he caught tremendous flack for taking a position. He told Polk he thought we were getting into the Mexican War for land acquisition for the wrong reasons. And he lost, he did not get a second term in Congress, largely because he took a position, the unpopular position against the Mexican War. Interesting. Of course, those that have read Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin, it's an excellent book to look at different opinions in the American scene. And the movie Lincoln, has anybody seen the movie Lincoln starring Daniel Day-Lewis? Yeah, that's also a good movie to invoke some discussion and thought in terms of moral themes, patriotism, etc. Next one. Okay, I love this statement by Robert Kennedy, shot there, of course, in Los Angeles as he was cutting through the lunchroom cafeteria area, kitchenette. And it's worth reading. Every time we turn our heads the other way when we see the law flouted, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, when we close our eyes and ears to the corrupt because we're too busy or too frightened, when we fail to speak up and speak out, we strike a blow against freedom and decency and justice. Next slide. And New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. I think one of the best statements I've seen from him was with regards to religion. And it expresses a lot of my thoughts, at least, in terms of true religion. But if you take out the word religion and put in political viewpoint, the thing reads, well, don't speak to me about your religion. First, show it to me in how you treat other people. Don't tell me how much you love your God. Show me in how much you love all God's children. I think that's true I think this applies to patriotism too. Don't preach to me your passion for your faith, patriotism, country. Teach me through your compassion for your neighbors. In the end, I'm not as interested in what you have to tell or sell as I am in how you choose to live and give. I think he came up with a pretty good one. And I put the caption over there on the left. How do we keep our patriotism and loyalty, devotion from becoming too self-centered? Our patriotism can get not only self-centered into our own tribe or country, but it can even get turned in so it's almost down to ourself, becomes almost a self religion. Next. And of course, you don't have to be much of a student of world history to see many a place where patriotism has gone amok. The storming of the Bastille. Not that it wasn't right for the French people to overthrow the French king and queen, but it turned into a violent turmoil that went way, way beyond bounds of human decency and ended up killing and guillotining hundreds and thousands of people. Lafayette, who had so bravely came over to the United States and helped George Washington, kind of barely got out of France. They wanted to arrest him and maybe put him to death. So he got out by the skin of his teeth, so to speak, from the French Revolution. Of course, the Twin Towers, those guys acted from what they felt was patriotism to their religion and their nationalistic perspectives of the Islamic regimes. And look what it did. Killed thousands of innocent people. The picture on the right is a picture, can you guess what country that might be from? That is North Korea. A recent rally within the last year where they held an anti-United States rally. Even,
Looks familiar.
yeah, even promoting Kim Jong-un held several rallies and they promoted the concept of nuking the United States and bringing the ultimate and starting a world war. So here's certainly a case of patriotism gone completely into the banks of evil. All right, next one. I mentioned this in one of the most recent lessons, the Halloween riot in Denver of October 31st, 1880. There was a fight in one of the downtown areas, and a white mob started a race riot on Halloween of 1880 in downtown Denver. And they went in and burned down, tore down Chinatown, and viciously went against. They were chanting things. Said they had over 3,000 men in that riot. Might have been a few women, but most of you had more sense than that. Chinese must go, stamp out the yellow plague. It said every single Chinese person or business was attacked. And many were brutally beaten. A 28-year-old man named Luke Young was beaten and dragged through the streets but with a rope around his neck. So here's certainly an example where in our country, tribalism can turn viciously on minorities and people that don't fit the definition of American patriotism. And let's get right to the questions. Deep dive into patriotism. So let's see what the group thinks here. We're going to start by asking, what undergirds your patriotism? What's beneath it? What are the foundational components of it that are most important as you look into your heart? Is it purely emotion? Probably not. But what's behind your patriotism? Let's get some feelings here.
Patriotism, democracy, link.
Okay,
Constitution.
Yeah, the
Constitution.
Constitution, I
That's
was
dark.
gonna say that.
okay,
History.
history, okay,
Country.
Feeling of security.
okay,
Feeling about liberty and equality is becoming more foundational in my own.
okay. Most people also have at least some degree of feeling to their countryside or where they grew up. It could be the little farm in Iowa where you grew up, the cornfield, or it could be along the river that you fished in as a kid. We're like animals in a way. We can get very bound to a place, Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, or whatever it is, that just touches the place in our heart and will always be something special. Okay.
Ron.
A lot of my patriotism comes from examples from my parents or maybe their parents. It kind of taught me what I should be patriotic about, not that I don't have those swelling feelings myself, but when I would observe my father, there wasn't very many things about history that didn't bring him to tears, and he wasn't able to serve because he was deaf, but he did everything he could, on this side of the wars. But a lot of mine too is observing other people, like when I'm at a parade and I see the flags go by, or when I see the POWs go by, or men who served, or just a band playing patriotic music. You know, music is a big thing that makes me, so, a lot of mine was learned,
So family.
family.
I'll be real brief. I was telling Ron before we started, I think there's three parts to what caused me to feel patriotic and love for my country is, the first was the Constitution, the way the country was founded, the principles of freedom and equality among people and protecting the minorities. And second is the individual people like Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln, especially the principles they had. And the third was what we've done since then, how we have protected other countries and come to their aid and saved Europe. And all of those come together, even though I have a realism about our faults. I think we've done much more good than we have bad.
Definitely agree with that one.
I must confess that my patriotism, went downhill pretty rapidly from the time that when I grew up and then went into the service. And then afterwards during the sixties and all the hassles that we went through then. And probably in the last 25 to 30 years, I've probably become more intellectually patriotic. Because I look at the United States as being, if not the only, then one of the very few countries that has correction built into the system. And that the errors or the, maybe even going beyond that, the sins that we have committed, we have acknowledged. And we strive to correct, probably not in as strong a way as we could, but that we still strive to correct. That we literally fought a war over the sin of slavery. We went bringing giving women the right to vote was way beyond when it should have happened. And yet we did. We did those things, and we have done things since the legislation of the sixties and things like that. These are things that were very difficult and other countries just didn't do. Or they had them crammed down their throat.
That's a good point.
So that's my intellectual patriotism is.
I feel like I took democracy for granted, that we would always have it. It's now being threatened. So it's more important to me now because I can't take it for granted anymore. We don't know if we're going to be able to keep it. So it is in the front of my mind more. I'm thinking about it more than I ever did before.
That was Benjamin Franklin's quote, wasn't it? It's democracy is the best,
If you
If
can
you
keep
can
it.
keep
is the
it.
best form of government if you can keep it.
Right.
Yeah.
And when did he say that?
1700. I want to give our Zoomers a chance to comment if they would like to. Sue or Susan or Joe or Elsa. If you'd like to jump in anytime here. Okay, Ron.
All right. Who are some of the most patriotic people you know and why?
Alive now or in the past?
Like what?
Alive now or in the past?
Or either.
Okay.
Liz Cheney.
Silence fills the room.
Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney. Totally contrary to my political views. I think she's a hero in our lives right now.
Okay.
For me, I grew up like at Antietam, so I was always surrounded by that kind of history. But for me, in my pretty recent past, the time I spent at the VA was just amazing. I never left work one day without just some story that a veteran had told me was just overwhelmingly patriotic. I mean, I've never had to risk my life to protect this country, but
Okay.
every day, every one of those men that came in my, and the ladies too, came in my office was just amazing. And I'm very grateful.
Okay, that's good.
My father, he lived the American dream. Great example.
And my dad, he was 30 years old, so they didn't draft him, but he owned a farm. And so, they needed food. And so he grew tomatoes, and went to a cannery. The tomatoes went to a cannery, sweet corn, all of those kinds of things, for the war effort. And, even though he was too old for the draft and, so forth, he had gone through horrendous things that had happened when he was a baby. He, and he would go up to, the, POW camp and, get, Germans, bring them down, and they would pick the tomatoes and throw them in the back of the truck. And that's how they harvested those things. They got POWs from,
Okay.
POW camp in Scotts Bluff, about, 8 or 9 miles. So, and I think your dad too. They're both patriotic, even though they didn't serve in the war, they did other things that supported.
Good point, good point. Those serve who didn't actually serve there. And I want to thank anybody in the room who did serve, including Frank Atwood over against the wall, who was wounded in Vietnam and awarded the Purple Heart. And I want to thank you, Frank, for your service.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Abraham Lincoln's one of my heroes.
Oh.
All the thing, not just his emancipation of the proclamation of Black Americans, but his working with people that he didn't even like, brought into his cabinet, his team of rivals, is just inspiring. The things that he did, the way he looked ahead for America, incredible hero.
There are many who pushed for a more perfect union. And I think that courage is exemplified in other of the examples we've talked about.
Yeah.
But those are my heroes.
Good.
We have another.
I just read a book, maybe someone else has already read it, on the many lives of Marjorie Merriweather Post. Her father was C.W. Post, who started a series out of Battle Creek, Michigan, Break Nuts, and then expanded it as General Foods. But they were obviously very wealthy. But during the war, just like you said, food was needed. She donated a ton of food, just so that she thought every soldier should have Break Nuts for breakfast. That's what they wanted. Most of coffee was exactly substitute. And when she had 4 husbands, but anyway, she also had a yacht during World War I. She gave her yacht to the Navy, and they used it for, she built a hospital in France, and the first ship that she sent over with all the supplies and all the military personnel, the doctors, the nurses that were needed, it was sunk by a German. And she did it again and sent another one. So an amazing lady that, I'm sure she's got plenty of critics because of the marriage that she went through and things like that, and her elegant homes, but she really did a lot of really nice things for the country. Her heart was in it.
I think the people we have serving in Congress that think for themselves, that do what they feel is correct and are not swayed by lobbyists or money or the power they're thinking they're gonna have, those people are patriots.
Something else that I'd like to add, that's Ira Hayes. There's a movie, primarily about it, he was one with the hand on Iwo Jima. Good for you. Amazing person. And they used him, then brought him back for war bonds. And he didn't like it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna
Yeah.
add Eleanor Roosevelt.
Okay. Good point.
My mother said that.
I want to add the mothers of America. I've seen a lot of women in America that have raised children. And they've, I mean, an afternoon in the kitchen over a hot stove, changing thousands of diapers,
I think we did 10,000.
packing, yeah, giving up a lot of goals, deciding I'm not going to be a businesswoman, and just raising families. That's a big part of America.
Ron, I'm interested in this triangle. The warrior, hero, patriot triangle. Comments?
Keep going. I'm not sure I've got it in.
I'm laying it out there. I wrestle with that. The warrior, hero, patriot intersection. To what degree that plays out? What do you think?
Okay. Warrior doesn't have to be the ultimate expression of patriotism. I think people, sometimes a hospital orderly or people that are doing teaching handicapped kids or 101 other things
Or
can
being an instrument of peace.
be just as patriotic. You don't have to do it by giving your life with a bullet.
But that's been kind of the model.
Yeah,
in many
yeah.
ways.
Yeah, that's right.
The most patriotic are those who are the warriors fighting.
And or the heroes.
I've got a question for Peter, as an anthropology professor who's been all over the world. Is patriotism common across all nations and
Yeah,
cultures?
that's a tough one.
Is it to more or less a degree?
Yeah, it really, in my experience in the cultures I've had the privilege of working with, Steve, it plays out very differently. I mean, when I worked with tribesmen in the interior of New Guinea, in the jungle,
They have a sense of their.
they have a
country?
sense of culture,
Or
they
just
have a
tribe?
rich past. They were part of Indonesia. They barely knew what Indonesia was because they were in a remote area, of course, and the rest of Indonesia spread out over 2,500 miles. So that's one where I wrestle with.
So their allegiance really is with their tribe,
Their allegiance is with their tribe.
not their country.
That's right, yeah, so thanks for asking, that's one example where it
Our
plays out.
speaker last week said that South Sudan was, did you say 4 tribes?
There,
And people were very, very locked into their tribe. If you ask, from what he implied, if you ask any one of the people in those tribes whether they were gonna get behind the South Sudan flag, if there even is one, or their tribe, there was no question. Tribe was everything.
Well, I think that's the question with immigration today, to a large extent, people wondering if people who immigrate here through the southern border really are feeling patriotic to America, or whether they retain their allegiance to Mexico or Latin America. Is that different in the past than when Europeans would come to America and feel more patriotic? It's a legitimate question, I think.
It's the free stuff.
Yeah, you know, Ron, the Constitution was framed by men at the time. They weren't necessarily Christians, but they were humanitarians. It's getting back to what you were getting at here. They're greater good. And yes, it reflects Christian principles as we read as the Bible presumably influences something we can aspire to, teachings of Jesus. Doesn't mean that we necessarily get there. We're not batting 1,000, some of us 500. But the fact is, it was framed by people who are very tolerant of philosophies and differences, but for the common good, the greater good. I mean, that's very inspiring. I mean, that's the light that shines, which makes it so attractive. People wanting to come here from all over, don't you think?
Would
The
agree.
free stuff. Cell phones, reloaded Visa.
Yeah, but there's a tension in that history that these framers were giving benefits to white male property owners. And the correction that Jim talked about over the years is what I admire. People who are willing to say, let's give women the right to vote and so on. They're the patriots in my mind.
I agree.
It seems to me like patriotism is at a high when the people are involved in it. When there are programs and, like the war effort, or when people back their country in an active way, seems to me like when I would think that patriotism was at its high. And when we just have no input and we have nothing to do but just sit back and say, what are we gonna do? It's left to the powers that be. I don't think that stimulates patriotism. Patriotism has to come from the effort of the people being active in it. Does that make sense? I mean,
Maximum patriotism has often occurred when a nation has been attacked
yeah.
militarily
everybody
or
comes-
is under
Yes,
imminently
Yeah.
under attack.
yeah.
Yeah, that, yeah.
Surge after 9/11.
A disadvantage we have maybe in America, we do have incredible amount of individualism compared to Japan. Where Japan, you're taught to think more of the tribe. You're expected to help the group, sacrifice for the group. I don't think we have enough people here that want to sacrifice for the group. When they think group, they think maybe my family or me, but they don't want to sacrifice for somebody in Georgia.
You're speaking to the limits of capitalism. You're speaking to the limits of capitalism. Our strength is also our weakness, yes.
And did you have your hand up?
Oh, one thing you can show your patriotic voting, even in the primary elections, even in the smallest elections, because a lot of things that we vote on, just are in our own backyard, and we don't realize what an effect we can have on local politics. We always think about Washington, but make sure you spread the word to your grandchildren, whatever. Please get them to vote.
Okay. There's a question on here about,
It's in the mail. Why not?
can your patriotism become such that it becomes so blind and unquestioning that you become a cult follower? Go ahead.
I think that's what you were just gonna get to say. Patriotism recently, in more recent years, has been equated with nationalism. And the nationalism has the stigma of being my country right or wrong, or my country, America love it or leave it. And I don't believe that that is patriotism. I think that is nationalism. I think that can develop into something extremely evil, dangerous, and destructive. But I think patriotism is a more solid rock to stand on, which says that I can look at my country and be proud of its achievements, but also try to take corrections to make its errors, to correct errors that have existed and still exist. That, if you can't see where we have gone wrong, then I think that it moves into the area of nationalism. And I think that is the problems that we are facing now, is that people are equating nationalism with patriotism.
Yeah. And in some circles, particularly in Christian, sometimes adding a heavy dose of one brand of religion.
Yeah, well,
And-
Christian nationalism
Yeah.
is a form of nationalism.
Right, right.
I have a question for anybody that's been a teacher, including Grant and Ann. Is the Pledge of Allegiance still taught anywhere in schools, grade schools, middle schools? Pledge of Allegiance, what else would be patriotic? It
My
used to
country,
be.
'tis of thee, you sing
Yeah.
it.
You know, I've been
And the
retired
songs,
for 12
yes.
years. But I have a problem because I taught in a lot of Title I schools
Uh-huh.
where kids, we've got to respect their religions too.
Well, sure,
And
yeah.
in the Pledge of Allegiance, it says, in God, you know, sure, they can opt out by sitting it out, but
Yeah.
I don't think it should be required personally, because we've got such a mixture of people from all kinds of backgrounds, and we need to respect their their rights too, in addition to ours, and that we need to be thoughtful about that, not let them feel you know, that they have to sit it out in order to not say it. I guess they could stand up and not mouth the words, but.
There are pros and cons
But
for
don't they
sure.
all have a God? One nation under God, don't they all have a God?
No,
Regardless-
No, they don't.
No.
Atheists and nobody sure.
Under God, by the way, was added in a little bit later. It wasn't in the original script.
In the 50s, they added that.
Yeah.
Okay, Grant and then Christine.
I just finished, teaching high school juniors and freshmen, and, we would say the pledge every morning. And generally, the students that had come from, other countries just recently, just sat there. And the kids that were born here and so forth, they stood with their hand over their heart and said the pledge.
Okay,
I didn't question the other kids, it's just what you do, I mean, because they have the right to be able to not.
yes, they
Pledge
do.
allegiance to the United States.
Yes,
If they came from Venezuela, they still have that feeling of Venezuela or Mexico or El Salvador or China or Africa, whatever African country they came. And we just respect that. And so maybe that's a form of patriotism, that we respect
I think it is, yes.
their feelings about
Respect their,
not saying it.
yes. Mhm.
If they were great
Christine
kids,
and
great
then
kids.
Peter. Christine.
I've been retired about 6 years, but I think 6 years before that, I think all of Littleton schools, but definitely in our school, we were required to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day at the beginning of our announcements. And people, some kids did not participate, you know, they just sat, but it was required.
Okay, I was just curious what the current practices were. Peter.
And each week we have a Rotary meeting, Rotary Club of Denver Southeast, of which I'm a member. And at each meeting, we, among other beginnings, begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. One of my colleagues, who I just chatted with about this last week by good coincidence, always holds her hand over her heart and does not say the pledge. So, not being a shy person, as you know, I did anthropological research. Why aren't you saying the pledge? I'm just interested, you know, a friendly question, and she was glad to chat with me because she's a very enthusiastic American. She says, I don't want to pledge allegiance to a flag. That's how she saw it.
Oh,
When she said that, the pledge for her was pledging to the flag.
Okay.
She is thinking about America. So I thought that was an interesting response. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, that's right. Different styles for different folks.
yes. That's
In
interesting.
one of the Simon and Garfunkel songs, there's the word, I pledge allegiance to the wall.
Oh.
That's, okay.
I have a friend and she won't pledge allegiance to the flag until they bring back women's rights.
Uh-huh.
She said, I'm not doing it till the government brings back women's rights.
Oh,
Which is-
interesting. Yes. I want to ask Susan on Zoom a question, if you don't mind, Susan. You're in
Sure.
Toronto, are a resident of Toronto, grew up in Denver. Do you have dual allegiance? Do you feel patriotic to both countries?
Oh, definitely. I'm a dual US Canadian citizen, so I can vote in both countries. And I never miss an election, both ways, and I just love it. Yeah, I mean, I have a great deal of patriotism for the United States and for Canada now, because I've come to appreciate what its role is in the world, and of course, to all the people that have immigrated here. to the point about people retaining a sense of, kindness and positivity towards their country of origin. We see that a lot up here, where people are just so committed to Canada because we've created a shelter from the storm, but there's so much commitment to their country of origin. So that's why we have this really interesting kind of milieu here, where people are both committed to Canada and also to their own countries. And I feel that way about the United States too.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Very good. Anybody else on Zoom want to comment or question? That's okay. We've got about 7 minutes left. Ron, any other categories you want to delve
I've
into?
always, well, got a question back here.
Gotta say something, like, it's all the talk and stuff about patriotism and all those kind of things. I was drafted. And so you're sitting there in your life and you're a young kid, and your whole thoughts aren't about anything other than the fact, oh, I got a date next week. What's happening? Do I have a job or food stuff? Also, you come in the mail, and what do you do? That time period, this was in the sixties. Some people would go up to Canada and stuff. A lot of it, you just show up. There's not a question about, kind of what you do. You got the letter, you do it. It is not a matter of being patriotic or not or anything else. It's just life. And then a lot of us didn't come back. I don't know, it seems like there's just so much talk about different things, but yet when you get down to the hardcore part of it, I don't know, I just kind of, I'm not too sure what to think.
Right.
Did that cause a resentment in you?
No. It's just like what you're expected to do,
Okay.
and you do it. It's not a question of anything, it's just part of life.
Everybody did it.
Born here, you're raised here and stuff, but, you get drafted, oh, well, here we go.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin.
I am I guess a participant, a member of two tribes. One is Husker Nation, Nebraska Cornhuskers, and the other is Denver Broncos. How many of you are Denver Bronco fans? You are part of a group, a tribe, and you're loyal to the Broncos. You're loyal to the wins and the losses and so forth and so on. And I'm loyal to the Huskers, how they do. So I'm not saying that is rises to the level of national, but it is a group that I'm fiercely a member of. And I know there's 4 different things that I've followed in my life. Number 1 is God, and number 2 is family, and number 3 is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so in that order. And so the 4th one is Huskers, Broncos. And there's, I'm sorry, Husker family job, that, God family job, that is your order. I'll go on.
Depending
Number
on
4
who's-
is everything else that I am patriotic to, I guess.
Uh-huh. So you can have multiple allegiances. We all do.
Yeah.
We love and feel attached and proud of many things in our lives, and they don't necessarily conflict. Yeah.
I think reflecting back on everybody's beginning here, you had to be selfish in order to survive. Look at what your mother did for you. You were taking. And eventually that family experience, maybe with siblings, taught you that you weren't the only person on this earth. And gradually the school, your community, the church, whatever experiences you've had have busted up that very selfish, self-centered point of view. And the sermon today, I think, was a good illustration of looking beyond yourself.
I've always been very terrified of loyalty that becomes so obsessive and blind that people,
My country over,
yeah, loyalty. I've seen it, some religious cults do that, where people are just, I mean, a certain religious figure can tell them what to do, and they're gonna go do it. No questions asked, no doubt, absolute certainty. They know that they're right and that you are wrong, and they can't. Their mind just becomes so narrow and so focused, and they'll do some terrible things.
there was a correction built into our military. They could refuse an unlawful order.
Okay,
Jim raised a question earlier about the Supreme Court decision, how that's going to affect America's future. If we get a person that's the leader giving unlawful orders, there's no unlawful if everything is permitted.
The divine right of kings.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I'm worried about that.
yeah, yeah, very much so.
5 years, they'll overturn it.
No, he's staying there forever. Yeah. Should be king.
No.
Just like any other Supreme Court decision can be overturned later.
Ron's got in our last few minutes, let me throw out one. Ron's got a question that says, what stirs your patriotic emotions the most?
Fireworks.
Vicky and I like to watch the July 4th celebration in Washington DC.
Capital Fort.
Capitol Fourth with the speeches and the music and the honoring of the, yes, and that makes me feel very patriotic.
I think music. Yeah, music.
Kate Smith singing.
I think also hearing some of our new immigrants, how much they love America
Yeah.
and what they have done to sacrifice to be here, providing such liberty and opportunity. It's inspiring to hear some of their
Right.
statements.
Yeah.
I find it.
You know, sitting here, listening to everybody, that's raised my level of appreciation for where we are, the country we live in, the faith and love that this group has. You know, I can't put up,
We don't often gather and talk about it like
no,
this.
it's wonderful.
Well, I've encountered people who experienced the Holocaust, who were able to, boy, we don't know what the kinds of things those people went through.
Question.
Oh,
And-
sorry I was late. This is off topic, but I just wanted to let everybody know, the Denver Brass is having a free concert at the Newman Center, 7 o'clock today. This week they do the Mendes Institute. They bring in brass players from all over the United States. They've done this for quite a few years, and they have free concerts throughout the week, but I would highly recommend, if you don't want to pay for parking, I've got a way for you to get free parking. But they are an amazing group that I've gone to their concerts since the late 80s.
Okay.
Anything else, Ron? We're about out of
No.
time. Okay, thank you, Ron, for a great presentation. Good
Thank
to
you.
see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
In the rain. Good to see you.
Hey, Ron.
I was kidding about.